Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, staff writer Zach Everson. Zach, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me on once again, Brittany.
Of course, Forbes is estimating the net worth of President Joe Biden. You have the number. How much is the commander-in-chief worth?
It is about $10 million, which is the same as what we valued him at earlier this year and also last year.
So $10 million making Joe Biden a multi-millionaire. I mean, this is at odds with his middle-class Joe persona. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
Yeah, obviously $10 million, it's a solid amount. I would very much like to have $10 million right now. But remember, this isn't like it's all liquid in cash right there. He's got a lot of money that he made from his government pension. He's been working in government for decades, and that's just compounded. And then he's made a few good real estate purchases in terms of buying a house in Wilmington, Delaware, and also his vacation home in Rehoboth, which is really what's led to one of the greatest increases. He also did pretty well the 4 years he was out of office, where he was making some money with speeches and books.
By the numbers, the economy is doing a lot better than it has been the past couple of years. But as we know, economic concerns continue to be top of mind for voters, especially as we head into the November presidential election. And as you point out in your piece, many Americans are concerned about inflation, high interest rates, flat wages, and stagnating home values. And many of them pin the blame on President Joe Biden. But as it turns out, he's suffering from the same issues. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, possibly even more so, at least in terms of salary. The president has been paid $400,000 a year since George W. Bush entered the White House in 2001. So there has been no raise for the occupant of the White House. So I mean that is flat. They did not put any sort of adjustment for inflation when Congress passed the bill to raise the salary. So as a result, Biden's getting paid $400,000. The equivalent, the $400,000 George W. Bush was getting back in 2001 is worth about $717,000 in today's purchasing power. So, obviously presidents back 20 years ago when they passed this law were able to do more with the salary than what Biden can do with his right now.
Yeah, definitely $400,000 in the early 2000s got you a lot farther than it does today. But as you noted, he has a lot of his money tied up in real estate, 2/3 of his fortune, according to your report. And you are saying that his financial well-being has been tied up in real estate for a while. So can you talk about his portfolio for us?
Yeah, so right now he has the two houses, one in Wilmington, one in Delaware, and they are flat in terms of valuation from last year. We haven't seen much appreciation there. But he, at a young age, got into real estate. Once he started making money after coming out of law school, he kept buying houses. He ended up buying 3 houses at one point. And he was living in a 4th property that he was getting, not having to pay rent for in exchange for managing a swimming pool. So he had those 3 properties. He ended up selling them to buy one property that he was going to move the whole family into, and then they fell in love with a different property and bought that one. And then shortly after he was elected to the Senate, they bought a house in Chevy Chase, Maryland as well. So he was back to having 2 homes there.
Another pattern he has found himself in is refinancing and tapping into those properties before when he's needed cash. So can you talk about those times for us?
Yeah, so originally those homes were all making money for him via renting them out. Most recently in Rehoboth, he took out a loan. This is another area where he's getting hit by inflation. It had a variable interest rate plus 1.99%. So a couple years ago, I think the amount that he had borrowed from it was somewhere between $15,000 and $50,000. Most recently, he, in his latest disclosure, disclosed that he has borrowed about $100,000 to $250,000 off against it. So, it's one way to make up for your salary staying flat is to just keep tapping into the equity you have in your house.
Is it normal to repeatedly refinance over and over again?
That's a good question. I'm not an expert in that, but I certainly know, as a former homeowner, that when it can certainly be beneficial depending on how interest rates change, and a lot of Americans do tap into their house for equity.
You noted before that in 2016, after he left office as vice president, he made a good chunk of change. How did he do this?
Books, speeches, the usual ways that former politicians make some money, after leaving the public sector. So he did pretty well during that 4 years. Earlier, when we looked at his wealth several years ago, we realized he probably could have made more and done better with his investments if he had put them in other places. So while he is worth $10 million, that number could probably have been higher if he had made some different choices.
So looking at the past when he first left office, let's say he doesn't win re-election and he leaves office again in 2025, would he make more money out of office opposed to that $400,000 salary?
He certainly would have the possibility of making more money than that $400,000 salary. I mean, it's also likely, if he were to lose, he may just want to retire because he is, certainly of that age.
Aside from his real estate and his salary, what are the other assets that make up his fortune?
The big ones are his pension, and then he has an annuity that holds, I think it's about 10 different mutual funds in it as well, and he's got a few bank accounts with some cash.
So $10 million, nothing to sneeze at for sure, but how does this stack up to his predecessor and biggest competitor now, Donald Trump's worth?
It is pennies compared to what Donald Trump has. I don't know the exact number right now because that Trump media stock has been bouncing all over the place of late. But Trump is worth $5, $6, $7 billion typically when I look at it. So this $10 million is certainly nice, but for Trump to compare it, it's about the value of, I think, one home that he has in the Virgin Islands that he's been trying to get rid of. So it's a rounding error for Trump.
Well, Zach Everson, per usual, thanks for your reporting.
Thanks for having me on again.